This is where the fun begins.
Are you sure? So be it. Did you miss me?
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this CAF chat briefing here. So this is not taking place of Thursday's morning CAF chat. That's 9 a.m. So I just wanted to come live here, and that didn't sound very well, but I just wanted to, broadcast live to just go over some few things with you guys, talk Star Wars with you, share what I've received, and also talk about the EU. Now, I didn't get to do my content yesterday or Monday, so I was going to either do a live today anyways or provide some more lore content for you guys. So here we are. And I do have Holocron Library Fox in here. Thank you so much. Those pop on, say hello, share the stream. If you are catching the replay, thank you so much for your dedication. And please hit the like button, everyone, and share. We're live. And leave a comment if you're catching the replay. So let's see here. So how are you guys doing on this Tuesday afternoon? Well, it's afternoon for me. It's 1:02 p.m. here. Holocron says this chats are being late and later reminds me of my own sleep schedule. No, this is not gonna replace the CAF chat. This is a spontaneous live, since either do content lore for you guys or come live and do a CAF chat briefing. To quote Don Diego, Jackson says, "I'm getting too old for this." I'm getting too old for this. So if you guys follow me on Twitter, you will know that I shared an interesting article from a clickbait pop culture site, which I always have said there are some truth to what they're reporting because it mirrors the direction that the companies want to go with these franchise and stuff. So it gives us a glimpse of what's happening, what's going on, who they value as their fans nowadays and who they don't, and how this how this sparks diverse like division. It creates a lot of negativity because you're telling one faction of the fans to get over it and basically just enjoy what you're being given. And so that doesn't sit well with me. However, the term gatekeeping comes into play and what that means to you or not. So what does gatekeeping mean to you guys as fans that have seen this huge transition of the lore per what the new owners, well, I wouldn't say new owners anymore. We've been past 10 years now, but what the owners are doing now, considering what was laid down beforehand. So what does gatekeeping mean to you? Is this a loaded question? Probably not. What does gatekeeping mean to you? All right. So before we get in, you know what? I'm debating because I do have a little bit of a content book haul I want to share with you guys, but I don't know if I want to do this before we get into this article or not. So should we get into this cringe factor type article here, or should we go into some and then do the fun stuff after? Or I don't know. So let me see what you guys have to say. Let me see what you have to say. Gatekeeping is an English modern word for the older politics. So politics, yeah. But gatekeeping, what does it mean to you, for not like dissecting what it means or the origins, where the word came from, but what does it mean for you on holding true to this pop culture lore that we all grew up with? So what does it mean to you? So yeah. So I'm not asking for the technical, like the definition where the origins from that is. And I do have coffee with me, see? But again, this is not replacing CAF chat on Thursday at 9 a.m. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share this article first because I wanted to get into basically canon, what is, what isn't kind of deal, but not to rehash what I have done many times. But I'm going to show here. This goes into the hierarchy of canon, I guess you can say, that the company made later on as they started developing more and more EU content. And what that means, and let me go ahead and change the view. I like to be right here. So what that means, and does it mean that there are 4 canons, like 4, like each one is its own individual canon? Does that mean that? Does it mean it's a multiverse? Or does it simply mean that this is an in-house guide of what takes precedence over the other as they build lore? So I'm sharing right here. If you could see this, let me go ahead and take myself off the screen and so you could see it fully. So what I'm sharing here from this insider, and I forgot what year it was. I think I posted it here. Yeah, so this came out, issue 101 in 2008. So this came out by Leland Chi in StarWArs Insider, and it kind of gives an information because fans were really wondering, all these novels, all this media that's coming out, what is, because you have multiverses, right? What is it all? Did it all really happen together? Is it all one timeline? And Leland came up with this canon tier: G canon, C canon, S canon, and N canon. And it only explains, like, this is an in-house explanation on how they develop the lore and what takes precedence over the other. Doesn't mean that these are all separate from each other. This is just the development. The G canon, basically movie canon, are the movies. They are the foundation of the lore. Everything expands off of it. And then, of course, you have the continuity canon, which is C canon, which is everything else. And then S and N are just basically stuff that really may not even mesh with any of that at all. And however, that's just, like I said, in-house guidance on how these relate to each other. What is the official, like not official, but what is the foundation and sets the rules, the guidelines, the lore, and that's the movies, and everything else expands. However, when you look at the timeline that's shared in books, shared in magazines pertaining to Star Wars, everything shares a single timeline, meaning that there is no separate canon. They're not separate from each other. They're all one canon, all one continuity. And I really think that Leland Chi should not have introduced this little concept here that they use in-house to the general public, because this is what creates confusion. This is where you have the people who really didn't care for, the EU, and they'll use this against or as arguments on the EU was never canon, or it was a multiverse, so everything that was considered EU really didn't matter, and it all did. And this little piece that I'm talking about will segue into this cringe factor of this CAF chat that we're going to talk about. And I see more people popping in, and I'll go ahead and address you guys here pretty soon. So please share the stream out. I know it's, a spontaneous live again. And so I appreciate everybody that's hopping in. This is not the regular scheduled program. So I really don't think that this should have been introduced to the fans as a guideline. I think that we should have just kept with the what has always been shared, the timeline on how the events fit around and in between the movies. Because when you really look at the development of the lore, like with the movies, the novels, the comics, and the games that have the game canon, so the novels are the canon story of the games, they not only influenced each other and shared the same history and stuff, they also influenced the movies as well as the movie influencing them. Some people are like, oh, the EU never influences the movie. That's not the case. And George has simply stated that, as well as pertaining to how Anakin got his scar. He's like, oh, I don't know. That's what basically he said. That's, the EU will tell that. And he joked around about like what could be the possibility. But basically, I think that was slipping in the bathtub, with his dry humor. But that's basically George saying, count on the other sources that connect with the movies to tell you exactly what happened, because he doesn't have time. He's not going to spend all of it explaining every single scenario on film. Like some of you guys might agree with me, maybe not, but Revenge of the Sith could have been a 2-part movie. There was so much going on in that. So much information going on in that. And then you have like TCW03 or CW03 from Tartakovsky that has the ending of the series, beginning, like the ending of that and the beginning of Revenge of the Sith all coming together. Like you're having your ending and it's the beginning, or the Battle of Coruscant, and then the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, it goes right into that. I really just said that, and so it's such a long explanation. Wow. Well, anyways, so with that being said, the EU, or expanded universe, and you guys are gonna laugh your asses off, basically, with how this person in this article addresses the EU, what they call it. But what my point I'm making here is, it's a big mistake for Leland having to introduce the in-house tier on how they set up the stories and what takes precedence over the other when they're developing story, because the fans should really not know that. All they should know is it's one timeline, and where that piece of information, that novel, that comic, falls in the timeline, if they're curious on what kind of happens before or after, where the movie lies and stuff like that, because it's always been one timeline. Always been one timeline. Let me see what else did I have on this slide. Oh, nothing there. Oh, and that was just another subject there. I just pulled up an old slide that I made. So let me see who's in here. I know you guys were popping on as we began. So Holocron says, means throwing out people surpassing Lucas lore. There you go. Plain and simple, gatekeeping. Be more snubby about better things. So I asked, if you guys didn't catch it, what does gatekeeping mean to you? To me, it means having discernment over what should and shouldn't be allowed. It's not always a bad thing. Okay, there you go. And let's see here. Means kicking Disney's mousy behind. Oh, that's funny. Poor Mickey Mouse, huh? Hello, Steezo. How are you doing? The Sentinels here. The real tears of canon for Star Wars. So nice to see that after so many years. And Matt has a good video about hierarchy of canon. Yeah, I seen that one, and he used those children's blocks and how now it's like everything's muddled because Disney doesn't have a direction, really. And Soul Assassins here. Thank you so much for popping in. I know I did this last minute, so thank you so much. After afternoon CAF chats now. Anyways, hey everybody, please hit the like button and become a channel member. Not really. I just decided to call this the CAF chat briefing with you guys here. So because it was very spontaneous. Instead of making a content video, I was like, let's just go live and talk about this article from CBR and go over the hierarchy of canon, I guess you can say, and what it really means. And what it really means is that no matter what you see here, G, C, S, N, it's all one single canon. There's no multiverse. They're not separate from each other. This is just a hierarchy of how the company handles the development of the lore. Okay, so Leland might have made been the best pick for executive, even if he is considered underqualified. Not the competition would be particularly stiff. I don't think he even wants it, or I don't know. I don't want to speak for the man. However, I have been disappointed with him since he has kind of changed his stance on canon. And I think that was a BS move because after talking about it all these years, about everything being canon, one single canon, all of a sudden, after what, 4 or 5 years within working under Disney, he's all of a sudden changes his mind about that. So to me, that's shady. I've kind of lost that kind of respect for him. However, here we are. We're talking about it, right? And that's okay. Gordon says gatekeeping is like a segmented food tray or any old school TV dinner. Keep the flavors separate so a thing can be enjoyed for what it is. Okay, well, interesting analogy. And this is only from Only Good Games, about to read Revenge of the Sith by Matthew. Oh, yes, you are going to love it. I've listened to parts of it on audiobook and it was great. Yes, it's going to open your eyes on like what's really to come, how much it's synchronized with the mission of the OT, about how Luke eventually will become the founder of the New Jedi Order and all of this other stuff. Brilliant work between Matthew Stover and George Lucas for that novel. Brilliant work. Brilliant work. The tier could be used to dismiss what we don't like. What do you mean, like for between Disney and George Lucas era, or just in general? I don't think that this is a headcanon thing. You can do your own headcanon and say, I really don't care for this story, so it's not really going to be what I'm going to focus on, or even I could skip over. But the tier of canon basically just shares like the G and C canon are not separate from each other. They're together. Basically, that's what Leland Chi has explained. And the S is basically quasi-canon. So how you play the games may not be exactly how their canon version is. And then N canon basically is non-canon material. So those are those fun what-if stories. However, G and C canon are all one single canon, are in the continuity, or continuity in the canon. They are not separate at all. So this is where I think that maybe Leland shouldn't have introduced this to the public, but that's just my thoughts. The main timeline that fans need to know is basically the ones you see inside the books, the ones that are printed out on poster, all of that, on how everything falls in together in one single timeline. That's all we should have to worry about. I think that this has created more nonsense when it comes to the anti-EU people to, further downgrade the EU as authentic to the movies. So this right here, and then they even dismiss what Leland has said about the G and C canon are a single canon. So I had that discussion yesterday. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll know what that is exactly about. Gordon says Mickey had a good run. And Casperius is here. How are you doing? And he can go, right? And then Only Good Game says, are you going to Legends Con? I plan on it, unless something happens and I can't show up. I plan on being there. I'm hoping maybe I can do a live stream or whatever there. We shall see. And there's that hierarchy of canon from Matt Wilkins. Thank you so much. Jackson says gatekeeping is not handing the keys over to vandals. Yes, the EU is dead. For there is no new content in that continuity. That does not mean it's dead. So would you say Lord of the Rings is dead since nothing really has been coming out? I think Star Wars as a brand is dying. Gordon says, I wonder how many people, or even it could be dead, how many people who don't like gatekeeping are people who think they've been gate kept. I don't know. That's a very interesting question. The EU isn't dead because the community keeps it alive with our reviews and passion for it. Exactly. And this is what this channel is about. It's about keeping George Lucas' era of Star Wars in front of you, keeping alive, discussing, having discussion about the lore and about everything that that has been developed, whether we liked it, didn't like it, whether we agree with certain points in it or not. You know, it's about having fun and discussing it. And I've always been the kind that's like, I hope that the Disney Star Wars fan will never have to through what we have gone through, because it's not fun. But my compassion seems to be slipping on that. And that's all I'm going to have to say about that. And Soul Assassin shared the link for Revenge of the Sith. So here's the audio clips here. You can also get it on the Audible. There you go. Dad Man Walking, how you doing? Another channel member here. Thank you so much for tuning in this the spontaneous briefing, I guess you can say. And the UE is only dead to wishfully think bean counters directly to help the company avoid paying royalties. No matter what, they still have to pay royalties. So even in those Essential Legend covers, those authors' names are still on there. They have to pay royalties to them for that book. However, characters, I believe, become a part of Star Wars or Lucasfilm. So there's those areas there that are questionable. EU dead shit. The EU has always reigned supreme with the saga 1 through 6. So now that we kind of discussed this tier of canon, whether you agree with me or not, that it was maybe a bad mistake to really introduce this tier of canon, and later, you know, the T started being inserted in there, and that is a whole different story that we've discussed many times as well when it came to Filoni and the Clone Wars. So I won't get in directly into that because it still falls into what I am saying here. I think that was a mistake for Leland to give us the in-house view of how to categorize the making of these the lore in these different mediums and stuff. Because in reality, he had to go back and correct it and say G and C canon are basically one single canon. They exist together in one canon. And so we have to realize that. So, you know, him going to have to course correct people's thoughts about like if they're separate and what have you, you know, clearly shows that people took this in such a wrong way. They interpret this in such a wrong way. So I think that it was a mistake, and that you want to know what's all canon, look at the timeline, where the books, the novels, the comics fall between the movies. They all share one single timeline, and that's evidence in itself. So that's all you need to know. It's all you need to know. Let me see here. And how do I get this little shit out of here? Oh, there we go. And from that being said, let's go ahead and get into that article. So brace you guys. Brace, because let me go ahead and remove this here. I am going to pull up the article now that I shared on Twitter, and this is some cringe factor shit. So we are going to do traditional cringe factor here. So go grab your drinks, go grab a snack. Again, this CAF chat briefing is not going to be very long. I'm not going to be like a regular CAF chat. And I'm still scheduled for CAF chat this Thursday. I don't see anything that would, you know, otherwise say it's not going to be scheduled. So go grab your drinks and let's get into this. So CAF chat, cringe factor.
So uncivilized.
So here we go, you guys. Not like, you know, I was wondering why there was this anti-EUism going around yesterday. And this was published about 3 days ago. So kind of explains whenever you see these clickbait pop journal, and I say that with very loosely, like whenever you see these guys come up with something anti-EU-ish, I guess you can say, that's when you start seeing people come out and talk shit and degrade all of that. And so maybe this was the reason why. I don't know, but I am just suspicious behind that. So, with that being said, I know you guys are still talking. Hey, Damajanai, how are you doing? Hail chat, how are you doing? All right. So, the Star Wars EU is dead. Time to accept it. And this is by James Parker. Again, it says it's published 3 days ago. 3 days ago. It says Star Wars extended. So I don't know if they exactly know what expanded and extended is. Like if they willfully they decided to do this out of spite, calling it extended instead of expanded, or they are just clueless. I would like to say that this was done on purpose. I think this whole article is one of these that was going to get people like talking and feuding and all this other stuff. So I think this was willfully done. I don't think this was ignorantly done. Extended universe. Extended. No, it's expanded. So was beloved by fans, but it's long dead. It's time for fans to accept the EU is dead and embrace new Star Wars stories. So what do you think about that? It's time for you guys to realize the EU is dead and embrace the new Star Wars stories. Well, how does that make you feel? You know, we got that letter from directly from Lucasfilm saying that they're no longer gonna keep the EU in its original timeline. They're gonna basically toss it so that they can have full creativity. However, you could still enjoy them. We're still gonna publish them. And we're still going to use characters, or we're still going to use story plots and stuff. So how does this make you feel from someone right here who is basically, is this a form of gaslighting? Like, how does this make you feel? So I'm going to go ahead and check. Gordon says dodge higher payouts by cooking the books and avoiding particular elements, not avoid illegally. Let's see here. Anyone who is thinking of getting into the EU should read Darth Plagueis, Dark Empire. That's a new one. Or the Theron trilogy, and it will give you the taste of what the EU has to offer. Yeah, those are some places to begin at, and myself and a few others will kindly help you find your way into the EU. I like to ask, okay, so what era do you like? And that kind of points away in like where I should have you start, or recommend, and that should have you recommend for you to start to explore. So anybody looking to start the EU, crossover and read, I'm always here for you. Christopher says, what if it said Disney canon is dead, time to accept it? How many here would clap, cheer, or cheer? I'm being very single. I'm betting every single person here. Well, I think there would be a valid reason for people to feel that way, because of the sentiment that's mocking or similar to what's going on here. Extra long Star Wars. Let's see here. No, I don't think I will. Time for people to realize CBR is shit. Yeah. Demajanai says there are only 6 Star Wars movies in the EU. I like how you have this little bit of you kind of blotting out your profanity there. Christopher says, I accept it was dead some time ago. This article is late. For you, it's dead. It's not dead. Dead, it means that no one's purchasing it. No one is reading it. That there is no soul left. There is soul left. There is soul left. let's see here. Star Wars extends. CBR should hire me so I can post factual information about topics. Laugh my ass off. So there you go. Let me go ahead and get back into the article so we can get into this here. And of course, we have a completion of, the big three ending with Crucible Image. I think this one was done after the fact from The Last Jedi or the Force Awakens, because the original one, he doesn't have a beard. Let's see here. Star Wars is undoubtedly one of the most popular franchises in the world, not just in film and television, but through books, comics, and video games also. So a fun fact here is that Star Wars was never a film franchise. In fact, its first publication was the book Star Wars, then the movie. But it was never a focus of George Lucas for it just to only be the films. And that's apparent. The Star Wars universe expands through so many mediums. It can be hard to keep track of all the different stories. It's not hard. You just have to get the timeline. That's it. That's all. Before Disney purchased Star Wars, they extended, and again, like I said, I think this is habitually done. Universe was the home of all these stories. When Disney bought the franchise, the EU ended. So the EU stopped being produced and they began their own EU. So there you go. So there was that switch there. However, they started pulling from characters from the EU. But ending doesn't mean dead. Dead means like there's no, like for a franchise, like for material in the franchise, that there's no one interested in it anymore. There's no purchases, all of that. Because if you're going to say that because there's no material coming out, that it's dead, then what about Lord of the Rings? Is it dead? No, Lord of the Rings is not dead. As long as you have people interested in, then it still remains. But many fans refuse to let go. So you guys refuse, I refuse to let go. So they're saying that we should let go. So then maybe the books don't have to be published anymore. They don't have to print anymore. It can come invalid. Well, there is nothing inherently wrong with holding on to stories that bring you joy. Oh, okay. So you need to let go, but there's nothing wrong with you wanting to enjoy the stories you grew up with. It becomes a problem when it acts as a barrier to entry to people trying to enjoy Star Wars stories. Oh, so because the because of George Lucas era Star Wars was so well done. Yes, there were some things, there were some retcons, there are some stories that are not so great. However, overall, because it was so well done and people enjoyed them and they wish to stay within the canon of Star Wars, that it creates a barrier for people to go to Disney Star Wars. I think that's just a choice. When a company alienates its fans, starts degrading them because they may not have liked the way that the Star Wars story has been taken, and they start discussing it, and you have the creatives calling them like gaslighting and calling them names and stuff like that. That's where the barriers begin. You decide, okay, well, I don't want to be a part of that franchise. So some people have given up on the original EU entirely. Some people are like, this is where I'm going to stay. And then some fans that came in kind of brand new to Star Wars decide to cross over to the original Star Wars lore. And I think another thing that creates barriers is the fact that their lore contradicts George Lucas's movies. And that's where another barrier is. If you want to talk about barriers where fans are like not really wanting to get into the new stuff, they see how much it has dismantled and bastardized either the lore or the original characters? I have to see what you guys have to say on this one here. Let's see here. Let's see here. Are you gonna let me? Oh, there we go. You won't let our mind warm in, you fan. Let's see here. So because we refuse to swallow their turds, it gives others bad fifis when they're swallowing the turds. I guess because we're not following suit, everybody has to do it so they don't feel disgusted. I don't know. Hey gang, and hey Batu, how you doing? Can't chat today, still at work, but EU is dead. Over my dead body. See you next time. Yeah, catch the replay and leave your comments. Let me see here. Let's see here. And so when they're saying EU is, might as well give up on the EU, well, what about George's movies then? Because George's novels for his movies are EU too. So they are that cross-fertilization right there. I would like to know what George Lucas thinks about the Fate of the Jedi series if he has ever read it. I think we'll never know, but he has read comics. And so that's an interesting. He has read comics, and I would love to know what his favorite comics are. Let me see. Okay. It's just, I hate StreamYard sometimes. Hate is such a strong word too, right? Hey gang, can't, oh, I already read that one. All right, let me go back to this article here, give you guys time to respond. The older Star Wars EU, so the original Star Wars EU, now referred to as what they call Legends, began in 1978 when the first Star Wars novel came out. From that point on, actually, no, it began in 1977 when the Star Wars novel came out. So that's right there, because the Star Wars, like I said, fun fact, the Star Wars novel, first novel ever for Star Wars, came out before the movies. From that point onward, countless books, comics, and videos, games continued to expand on the stories started by George Lucas. These stories told the tales of Luke, Han, and Leia after the rebellion, or during the rebellion. Oh, well, there was still rebellion, because there were stories made in between the movies and before, and then centuries later, and then once George started opening up the PT era, then there was those stories. They explored years before prequels and looked at everything in between. So this person is specifically just talking post Return of the Jedi stuff. However, the EU consists of more than just that. One of the most famous and beloved eras of Legends, our original EU canon, was the Old Republic. So that the Old Republic, see how he's wording this? So the Old Republic basically was, like I said, more than 3,000 years ago in the timeline and stuff. So it wasn't just anything just wasn't about Luke, Han, and Leia after the rebellion. There was so many different stories and so many different eras that did not include them as well, including 130 something odd years after the fact that, has Cade Skywalker. Yet in order for Disney to be able to tell any stories, the cancellation of the EU had to take place. No. They could have told stories. They could have retold some stories, made a series on Disney Plus. I'm just using examples. However, I don't wish this now. Hear me out. I don't wish this now. But back then, they still could have kept the EU. If they were planning on doing TV shows, they could have, used, I'm going to just use the generic one, Thrawn Trilogy, and kept with the story, the book, and its original characters in the book, and created a series from that. That's just one example. And there was many places to do stories in the timeline, even post Return of the Jedi, that could have been explored. Many companies that were sold off to a different owner, many franchises didn't have to reboot to tell their story. They worked with. However, that kind of is questionable on its own. But the EU did not have to be tossed or stopped in order to tell stories. That's a huge fallacy. That was just their decision. They worded it for creative freedom. However, they still had ways to work around it. They could have kept it its own timeline. and finished off the stories that were being done during that time, that were being finished in that time that they canceled. So there was many different ways they could, but this right here, no, they did not have to cancel, quote unquote, cancel the EU to for it to be for them to tell their stories. Disney was obviously looking to tell new stories, and I already just explained that. So in order to do that encumbered, Disney needed to kill this. They didn't kill it. It's not dead. They're still producing books. They're still pulling from there. So basically they wanted creative freedom. They said that there was no source material, which is laughable, right? There's no source material, but however, they're pulling from the source material, right? And they're still publishing it and also making new covers for the Essential Legends. So they didn't kill it. It's still here. It's still viable, and it's still the true canon, because you can't declare canon. Only the true creator can declare canon. We know that. He said that the EU was part of the saga. If Disney had kept the EU intact, then it would have almost been impossible to find space to tell new stories in Star Wars. Like I said, no, it would not be. They could have expanded off of like Jaina Jag and Ben Skywalker's story, leading into the legend, or the legacy comics. They had a timeline that they can expand in between the Old Republic, like the end of the Old Republic, and then the beginning of the PT, that one time frame that has no lore there. They could have like basically shared us stories show wise that have already been made. There are so many possibilities. The company would have ended up either just adapting books and games, or it would have had had to find small spaces to tell stories in between the events of Heir to the Empire or Shadows of the Empire. Now you're talking about a small little tiny gap. Does this person not realize that the timeline is 25,000 plus years ago? They can even go beyond Cade Skywalker family storyline and go way past that and do something new. They had a lot in the Old Republic era that they could have added to as well. Kept continuity with what George had left them, that treasure trove of books, novels, games, movies, all of that. So you're saying that they would only select between Heir to the Empire or Shadows of the Empire? The timeline is not this small. They're not even being truthful on how big the timeline is and where they can place stories, continue stories. And it's not a bad thing to adapt books into shows, as long as like they kept true to what was being done and said, and the characters, the plot stories and stuff like that. Because of course you're gonna have to, make the plot line, the story a little shorter for the series. Killing the EU. So here we go again. Keyword killing. This is how this is what the person thinks about the original expanded universe. Allowed total freedom for the franchise, while Disney's promise of one consistent canon. Imagine that. A consistent canon which never happened yet, has not been kept, with many Star Wars books being continually retconned. For better or worse, though, transitioning from the EU to the sideline. So transitioning from Star Wars EU to the sideline original EU canon lend to the creation of shows like Andor, The Mandalorian. So these stories here are some of them that break continuity, either to the development of where they fall in the timeline, and even the characters that are in that timeline, Are they still continue with the destruction of certain races and cultural advances of certain races or groups? That's nothing to be celebrating about when saying, oh, EU fans should just give up on their lore and cross over to these stories that basically bastardize George Lucas's story, that change your perception on how you should view George's story and what he intended. I have said this many, many, many times before, and I'll keep on saying this. These stories and the ones that I'd not highlighted, even the comics, even the novels and stuff, are designed to retcon the movies, George's movies, and how a person perceives the lore. So this person is falling in line with this kind of talk, this discussion. And it almost feels kind of like the Yahtzee-ish kind of take of like, throw your books away, throw them away. You know, we see that, you know, that being preached today. Throw your books away and do what I tell you to do. Read what I want you to read. Imagine that. Imagine this concept of this person and in defense of the new lore. It would have been difficult to create a new history of Mandalorian. No, it would not be difficult. Okay, let me read this again. It would have been difficult to create a new history of Mandalorians or create characters like Cassian Andor if the EU still in existence. No, it would not. You could make an adventure of a new Mandalorian with the Mandalorian culture that was set up already by Karen Traviss, and just be aware of like the timeline that it falls in and the events that fall in that timeline, because not, you know, like when you do an individual story of someone new, it's still they're not gonna fully coincide with the major events unless you want them to. As long as you keep continuity of what's going on in that timeline, it's not impossible. Example, Corran Horn is one of them. I know people, this can be controversy, but he wasn't in the original Jedi Academy trilogy, but he was brought in eventually in iJedi. So as long as you adhere to what was going on in the events, it is possible. You're going to have some fans that are like, I don't care for it, but as long as you keep up with the events and you don't break the plot points and you don't change the story, and if it's doable, it's fine. It's fine. These stories kind of failed to do that as well, but hey, what do I know? Let's go ahead and go down. So there we go. So we do have, this looks like the original Thrawn. Awesome. I love to see that. We got Bane here, Mara, and Luke. So, and then we have the Yuuzhan Vong vessel back here. So nice little bit of mesh of different timelines here. Despite Disney canning the EU. Oh, so now it's canning, not killing. Okay. The franchise has continued to borrow and adapt. No, it's not adapting. Yeah, borrowing. But adapting, they can't be adapted into a timeline that they don't belong in, that the events never occurred before. And without them just not being the character who they originally was as a character. Because what made the character unique was all the events and the people that surrounded and shaped their experience. Like I said before, with Mara Jade, people are like, oh, well, she doesn't have to be married to Luke to still be the same character. Absolutely, she does. But you can apply that logic to Palpatine. If they remove Palpatine, she would not be the same character either. Both are male figures. One's married to her, one raised her. Talon Card is another influence of Mara Jade's. Take him out of that, she's not the character who she is. So like I said, events and people who surrounded this person, basically developed the character into who they were by the experiences that they lived with that person, with those people and the events. So now you just get a shell of a character that looks like them but is not the same character because the events and the people tied around them are not there. Grand Admiral Thrawn, all right, didn't happen the way it originally happened to make them such a unique character. Grand Admiral Thrawn, part of Mandalore's history, and even aspects of the New Republic have all been borrowed from the EU. Borrowed, they've been bastardized, really. Ahsoka and Dave Filoni's movie will even be adapted. No. They're not adapting Heir to the Empire. There's no way. And when you look at this, it's just a continuation. When you watch the trailer, it's just a continuation of the Rebels cartoon, but this time live version. While this has upset some Star Wars fans, others understand and that this is what's best for Star Wars and the old EU tales. It's not best for the old EU tales. The EU had some good stories, but it was largely cluttered with way too much information. Oh, here we go. Had good stories, but was largely cluttered with too much information. No, it was a history. It was a history of events that happened. They weren't cluttered. It was just like if you go and look at Earth's history for maybe even one country, you can trace events going back for generations, right? Doesn't mean it's cluttered. So he's using this term cluttered with too much information to saying that it was just not planned or organized well. When we were talking about the hierarchy of canon and how I thought it was a mistake for Leland to share that, and I said, if you want to know what's canon, look at the timeline. That timeline is basically a historical timeline. So this person, maybe anti-EU, I don't know, probably. Picking and choosing what was part of the EU makes what was part of the EU make it into Star Wars canon. Oh no, it's already Star Wars canon. Disney Star Wars is not canon. Is the best way to move forward. So this person's using this as an argument on why a fan, the old guard, the EU elitists, I guess you could say, the EU lovers, should move on. And so this, I didn't highlight this. This is intentionally highlight. The Star Wars Extended, again, here we go. Star Wars Expanded Universe was a huge part of Star Wars history. Okay, so first of all, you say it was cluttered with too much information. Now it's history. But it is just that, history. Well, yes, it's history. No shit. That's what I just got done talking about. The EU is dead, and the EU is not dead. And fans need to finally accept it. Disney will continue to use whatever they want from the old stories, and that is absolutely for the best. Actually, is not for the best. Actually, it demoralizes and what has came before, what the authors wrote, what was developed through George Lucas and stuff. And frankly, he is not pleased basically with what is going on with Star Wars today. So it is not best. It's a destruction. It's a slap in the face. So basically, he's slapping you around saying, it's not good. You need to read this because I tell you to. So gaslighting. This is a huge gaslighting type article. For all the hype surrounding the EU, it was largely a mess, and its death makes Star Wars better. Here we go. It was largely a mess. No, it was not a mess. So this person has never researched the making of Star Wars. And I'm going to go ahead. Let me see if the book is here with me. Here it is. Yeah. I am like surrounded by books right now. I got to refile these books into the proper place on their bookshelf. So I'm going to go ahead and come back to you guys with this book here. So let me go ahead and just put myself on the screen with the article. I don't want it to be just that. There we go. Come on. All right. So here we go. So right here, it's upside down. Sorry. This is one of the best evidence that the Star Wars EU is not a mess. Again, some stories were not as great as the other. That's just a given. A lot of artists had their best and their worst in the whole timeline. That's a given. But it's not a mess. It was well planned, well organized, and well kept in a timeline that created a history, but never was a mess. If it was a mess, then we wouldn't be here discussing what's going on with, the EU and all of that. I can't wait to read you guys' comments. I know you guys are probably just going for it down there. So basically, largely a mess, and its death makes Star Wars better. So again, only a franchise is only dead when the people stop reading it, stop supporting it, all this other stuff. So the original George Lucas's content made under the authority of George Lucas and his approval and, sometimes his help. It's not gone. It's not a mess. Even in the beginning of when they decided to start making the Marvel comics before Dark Horse came in and stepped in, even that, with the quirky stories and stuff like that, was not bad. They realized that the fans wanted a one single continuing timeline or history of events, and that slowly started being put together. Once Thrawn Trilogy came out and became a huge hit is when George Lucas and his company took notice and said, okay, they are liking this continuity of history, single timeline. Let's give them what they want. Everything's canon together unless otherwise noted. So that hierarchy that I shared, G and C, are one single canon. And it was beautifully crafted. Sue Stoney is the one that took upon herself to start creating and taking notes, and then others followed suit. Then you got into Leland Chi, all of the history, all that beautiful developmental history of the expanded universe. It happened because of us, because us fans wanted to know what happened next, wanted a historical history of events, enjoyed the stories, got into discussions about the stories, whether, we're like, oh shit, well, we like this one story here and this other one, we're like, what the hell happened? But all in all, we are the ones that influenced the direction that Lucasfilm took the expanded universe with the movies. So to have this guy say, we need to accept that the EU is dead, to move on and embrace the new stories, this is intellectual dishonesty. It's degrading to the fans that love the stories. And it's degrading to any fan who, there's going to be fans that go between both sides, Star Wars and George Lucas era, or Disney and George Lucas era. Sorry. So what are they to think? There are fans out there, whether we like it or not. There are fans that love both sides, read all the stories, no matter what. So now, should they just say, oh, well, the original EU, I need to toss it, I need to sell my stuff, and just stick with what Disney's doing today? No. So let me see what you guys are saying. All right. Woo, okay, it's refreshing on me. You guys were just jamming. Let Rays strike me down. We're coming up on an hour here, so we'll get into my little haul of books here that I got, my daughter got for me, that are going to replace some books here. So I might be sending some books to donate. You won't let our mind work. Oh, I already read that one here. I read that one as well. I'm trying to get to where I didn't read. Gordon here. Do Yisla Mary work on Disney Star Wars fans? Let's see here. Old Republic was like 20, yeah, around that. So yeah, I agree. So for example, okay, now that we're just discussing Old Republic, and I forgot to mention earlier, you know how they're remaking the Old Republic, and now how they had offered expansions from SATOR and stuff, even under Disney Star Wars. So are people who love that because that's considered original EU, should they just toss that too then? Because it's no longer relevant from what this person says, right? Let's see here. If need be to be removed, why they cherry picking, right? You know, you're gonna love your don't read the original stories, but be happy with what we're doing with our cherry picking. Basically, that's it. That's all. Now we can talk about, like, and we have talked about this on the spacing and stuff, but a lot of people are saying Star Wars in general is dead with the quality that's being produced and all of that. So that's, you know, so if that's the case, then I don't know. I mean, do I want it? Do I want Star Wars to die? I'd rather have the original stuff that was being produced. I don't like what had happened with the retconning the stories and the changing of iconic characters and stuff. So, yeah. Even with the keys to the equipment room, Disney can't play. Let's see here. They had approximately 10K years of timeline. So it's 25,000 years from my research. So there's a lot of timeline there that was already created and produced. And they also, so from there, you can expand on that. There are places to add more stories, continue more stories, what have you. So I wanted freedom from responsibility, which never works for long. We actually could have had a proper send off to Luke. Yeah, for Luke, I agree. I agree with you on that one. Let's see here. There's a lot of kid characters they could have highlighted. Yeah, they could even went into the Young Jedi Knights and did a fun series with that. That would have been nice to see, like doing a continuing series, like maybe an animation one of Jaina, Jason, Tahiri, Anakin. Eventually, when he was born, you know, he's not that far. Like his age difference is not that different, or not that far than from Ben Skywalker, because Ben Skywalker was born towards the beginning, middle of the New Jedi Order. So let's see here. So that one would be difficult to include, you know, Ben, because he wasn't even alive during that time. Just think we could have gotten a Zana trilogy, a Sword of the Jedi trilogy, if not for Disney. Yep. And please smash that like button. So we're coming on the hour. Like I said, this is a briefing. So we'll get into what I have to show you. I'm very excited about this. Yeah, so we'll get into that and then have a closing of the live stream here. Yeah, so thank you guys again. I needed to discuss this. I need to discuss like my thoughts on the hierarchy of canon that Leland had presented like in 2008, and how much people were confused on what that meant, on what was canon and what isn't canon. I had to discuss that a little bit, which goes into this. And then the little haul of novels I have here. So the desire is not there. Disney meant to capitalize the most popular Star Wars titles, but obviously not the content. Yeah, they are also rebranding titles onto their own shows. And they wanted freedom from response. Oh, already read that. Let's see here. David Lorian are not Mandalorians. That's what you're calling them. Nice thing. Nowhere in this article says you should throw the EU books in the trash. They're saying give up. Don't read them anymore. Blah, 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 blah. So basically, yes, in a nutshell, that's what they're saying. Don't read it anymore. Basically, don't read it and read the Disney Star Wars ones. Read what we want you to read, in the words of Dr. Evil from Austin Powers. How about no? Right. Oh, come on. I thought I pressed you. There we go. Geez, OG, you sound like a black-pilled gatekeeper now. Okay, well, I mean, you put labels on people, I guess. I don't know. I'm just over here like, hey, wait a minute here. This is just adding salt into the wound that Disney and their specific fans have already been doing. So you're saying we should build a MAW information around the EU. Won't be easy. I'll need a bunch of Killiks and Celestials. There you go. Let me see her. Trying to read through all these before we move on I want to show you what I got. I'm pretty excited about it. It's a big galaxy with a large frame of time. Just too broad, detailed, legitimately diverse than their small, arrogant minds can handle. That's a very good analogy or observation right there. Very good. Let's see here. And Silvor or I think I said that wrong. I'm sorry. Bastardize, more like sodomize. Ooh, okay. We're going to that next level. Everyone in Star Wars doesn't have to know each other, but unfortunately, too many working sci-fi fantasy screenwriters are soap opera style writers. Well, George Lucas said that Star Wars is also a family soap opera, but I think that's where the soap opera ends. Once you get outside of the Skywalker family, you get more into a broader sci-fi where you can expand on different characters without fully engaging with the original characters, right? Like Luke, Han, and Leia. A good example of that is the X-Wing series. Yeah, they did have some engagement with Luke. It was a great opportunity to bring Luke on with the discovery of the archives that Palpatine basically hoarded. And that was a great development for Luke, because at the time he was searching for, more Jedi archives information and stuff like that the Emperor either hoarded or destroyed. And so that was a great little nuanced tidbit to that. And also gave us a new Jedi who basically became a Jedi a lot later, just like Leia became a Jedi a lot later in the lore. Let's see here. Zaggerot 315, hello, how are you doing? I swear I'm pressing on these things. Let's see here. Largely a mess, equal. They were too stupid and lazy to read and understand the EU. Exactly. It was a mess. We wouldn't be here, right? Yeah, if it wasn't kept well as it was kept, we wouldn't be discussing this at all. Let's see here. The EU was so dumb, Pablo. Why were you so intent on making your name so much bigger than others on the companion, or you are just hating on it now because it's convenient for you? I think it's been something that you're not going to fight the hand that feeds you. And that's what has been happening. That's probably what happened with Leland here. So, yeah. And I agree, George should have. I'm probably thinking shouldn't have. So, it's we can get into this discussion. Poor George, he was like, I'm ready, I'm starting my family, my baby's going to be born. I know the kind of person I am, so I'm going to even micromanage on the sidelines, even if I put someone in my place to oversee the operations. So he was conflicted, but he still wanted the fans to have something. And so I commend him for that. When you make such a decision, you never know what's going to happen, right? And we know how defeated he looked when he was being interviewed by the Harlem school during the closures. And I did do a video on that, so you could probably find it here. I could share that later on. But I think Stig was my co-host during that time, and we did discuss it. And he looked very defeated with the direction that they decided to take Star Wars. And even with the interview with Charlie Rose and his choice words is another example of how defeated. And people say, oh, well, he sold it, so who cares? Blah, blah, blah. Well, he still did care because he thought he trusted. And, seller's remorse? Maybe. We will never know. We will never know. And here we are talking about it today. I never thought that Disney would have been a good fit. I never thought that Disney would be a good fit. And I still hold this today because George did not like big corporations, nor did he like Hollywood. So, but Bob Iger even talks about how he basically kept coercing and kept influencing George on selling to Disney. And I think George's intuition, he didn't follow with, how, because he was an independent filmmaker. He broke away from the Hollywood system from the beginning. Yeah, he still used some resources and stuff if you get into the history and stuff, but basically he didn't want to be confined to the Hollywood structure. Very interesting, bits of history about George and the creation of Lucasfilm and how he influenced on the outside of Hollywood the development of like the technology, CGI, all of that. And, he did receive backlash with that too, because he wasn't confining to Hollywood structure, but yet he did groundbreaking stuff. Imagine the salt in the wounds of Hollywood during that time. Very interesting, huh? I mean, just, I'm still reading through George's history. I have the history of George Lucas, or the history, the cinema of George Lucas, sorry. And then also the Star Wars archives for episodes 1 through 6. So I have those two, and it's a very interesting read to get behind the thoughts and structure of this man's brilliance and what his focus was and all of that. It's fascinating, and it kind of educates you more on Disney, or not Disney, on Star Wars or Lucasfilm in general. Very, very interesting. Your cringe blinds you, OG. You're rereading past comments. Yes, I am. Because I forgot where I left off at. I need to get all the books again. I lost them in a fire. I'm so sorry. If you're on Twitter, follow me on my community page and just follow me on my Twitter. And I haven't done it lately, but I like to share like places like thriftbook.com is one of them that you can find the original EU books without legend label. Like I would try to find those absolutely before you purchase anything with the legends label. Sometimes they are going to be pricey, so I can't speak for your income, your budget, but however, I recommend finding the original prints before legends. So, you don't want to give back the money to a company that hates you. They're going to hit the Old Republic next. They're re-releasing figures of Revan and the rumor of yes, I remember you sharing that with me, and I meant to talk about it here, so maybe we'll talk about it more on CAF Chat Thursday about the release of the figurine of Revan and the Keanu cameo. So we'll get into that. So Gordon says, OG is over here Star Warsing. Yeah, so let's go ahead and get into, I know you guys still have a lot to say. And I don't want to hide any comments. There we go. So let me go ahead and remove the article from the screen. Come on, dude. I just want to get it. There we go. So I added myself in here. Let me go ahead and remove. And okay, here we go. Why do you have to act slow? There we go. Hi, you guys. So I'm just like, had a busy morning, so didn't really get to really jazz myself up for you guys here. But I always say, look in very unusual places that you may not think to find, Star Wars content. Excuse me. Because you may find some. So I asked my daughter, she went to Amoeba, and I asked her to check to see if she can find any pre-Disney Star Wars under Dark Horse there, because they have a Dark Horse section and you can find them there. So this is what she found here for me, and I'm going to show you. So this one right here, this is the Dark Empire 2 right here. Look at all this. Look at. So beautiful, great condition. Like I said, if you want to know where they fell in the timeline, does this one have it? No, it doesn't. Okay, sorry. But sometimes they'll have the timeline in the back of them. I know Legacy Comics do. But you got the beautiful history art here, about the author's creative team right there. Beautiful. So I'm really excited about that. And then these two here. So we have Empire Volume 1 here, Betrayal. And then Empire Volume 2. So this one's called Dark Lighter. It's another one here. Let me see if this one has Star Wars Timeline. This one has it here. So like I said, if you want to know what's canon and where they fall in, here you go. Beautiful thing. This one is basically the comic book one, but you can take this and the timeline. Maybe I'll do that one of these great years and place them in the timeline with the books. Do your own timeline and then share it. I know there's many people who has done that before. So again, here's this one. Oh, let me show some pictures from here. So I have this huge show and tell. I'm just so happy. Look at that. Look at him. That's Biggs. Wow. The history between him and Luke. Let me see here. There we go. So a fun one there. Well, actually, this is all fun. And then I got this one here, Star Wars Essential Guide to Characters. So you have here, not only the movie characters in here, but you do have like Grand Moff Tarkin. You have his history here. You do have like Yoda. Let me see, is Theron in this one? Let me find it. Darth Vader. Yeah, so you have like Luke Skywalker here. Anakin Solo. So you have the grandkids in here. All of that. You have Ula, Labat, all of them here. This right here, very fun to look at. You get a nice bit of history from them. And then the biggest one, I thought that was the biggest steal. I'm just missing, I think, 3 books. But these are all hardcovers here. Let me go ahead and just aim this down here. Is the Fate of the Jedi series, all hardcover, no legend labels. These are the ones where it was hard to find non-legend label ones unless you get the hardcovers. So here you go. So like Backlash, Almond, Outcast. I don't have these in order. So, but look how beautiful these guys are. And then Vortex, Allies, and Abyss here. So I just need 3. I'm missing 3 here. I think this is another 9-book series here, just like Fate of the Jedi, which I would love to have Fate of the Jedi all in hardcover too. But I do, when I started collecting these, I got this paperback and they had legend labels. So those will be donated out to probably the antique store that I like to visit all the time. And because the person is going to be purchasing second, third hand now, you know, Disney's not going to get any of the money for these. So, and these do have raised foil on them too for the logos here, which I love seeing the raised foil. So that's what I got so far. So again, always when you go to antique stores or like pop culture stores like Amoeba and stuff, and they have a book section, check it out. You never know what you're going to find. You might find something worth your while, especially if you're looking for certain Star Wars content and you don't want to purchase Legends directly from the company, Legends labels. So yeah, let's see here. So look in unusual areas and talk with the owners and see like what their fluctuation is with receiving books and stuff like that. Jackson says, I always check small time used books in antique stores when I travel, just on the off chance I could find something good. I found the whole X-Wing series when we went to an antique store. So I purchased that. So, and they're all foil labeled too for the label. Beautiful. Wasn't it Dark Empire that Lucas read and enjoyed so much that he bought a copy for all his employees? Correct. And so when people say, oh, that was never canon, George never considered canon, he's the one that helped. He's the one who approved Palpatine coming back and helped with the story. I'm almost done. All right. And let's see here. So we're going to start concluding the show here. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Next Monday, I will go back to, you know, the content creating. I think I'm going to finish up with the compare and contrast of Luke Skywalker's orders, New Jedi Order versus his order in the Disney lore. So I'm going to finish developing that. So stay tuned for that. I'm sorry that the day got so busy. My family is visiting as well. So my time frame, and then I went and I subbed a class. So my time frame kind of like just went out the shits when it came to, you know, the channel creation here. So content. So you guys, thank you so much. Thank you for talking through me with this cringe factor article here. Know that this article is a huge gaslighting article that no way should you even have to consider giving up reading something that you enjoy and enjoying the lore that you grew up with. So thank you guys so much. And I'm so thankful for every single one of you. Again, CAF chat this Thursday. Friday on the spacing is is our on Open Airlock Policy channel. The spacing, there we go. I got it right this time. 8:05 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So I'm giving you my time frame. So wherever you live in the world, or even the United States, or wherever, you can, you know, calculate what time that is for you and join us. So thank you guys again. I shall see you on CAF Chat Thursday, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. You guys have a great day, and may the Force be with you. Talk to you later. And let's see. I want to play something fun here for you guys, but I don't know what it is. This one right here.
I had fought the worst of all wars and witnessed the redemption of evil. I have seen balance restored to the Force. But order can turn to chaos, as it did when I was born. Now, with my loved ones and my loyal allies, I face a new challenge unlike any before. And I'm not sure at this time we can win.
Star Wars Vector Prime by R.A. Salvatore, the first novel of the New Jedi Order.
Another happy landing.